Confessions of a Film Poser! Hey, I'm Eli.
And I'm Vince.
And we are film posers. There are classic films, and then there are films that change cinema forever. Movies so impactful that you see their fingerprints in other films for decades. This week, we're tackling one of the biggest, Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey from 1968. This movie inspired everything from Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Alien, Blade Runner, Arrival, Interstellar, A League of Their Own, and Harriet the Spy. And, of course, a little independent film that came out in 1977, Star Wars. 2001 was Kubrick's 8th film as a director, and easily his biggest box office success. It cost about $10 million to make and ended up grossing over $146 million worldwide. A slow burn hit that ran in theaters for years. Adjusted for inflation, it's his top grosser by far. And it wasn't just the money. The movie was so groundbreaking that NASA reportedly worried Kubrick might beat them to the moon. The realism was convincing. It even had people wondering if the Apollo missions would be upstaged. Conspiracy theorists, I can hear your heads exploding. But the real question is, with all this acclaim, all this influence, and nearly 60 years of praise, knowing that so many of our favorite films wouldn't exist without it, why the hell haven't you seen it yet, Vince?
Honestly, 2001 is a movie that I think I've started a few times and never really got past the first 20 minutes. It's a movie that doesn't have a lot of dialogue, at least in the beginning, at least as far as I've gotten. And it's something that I've always been told that I need to see, but I just never have. I recently bought it, and I'm excited to check it out. We both got our copies of the 4K version, and truthfully, I'm really excited this is our first episode.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, largely the same for me too. I've always, this movie is referenced. It's such a cultural icon that, in seeing other movies, obviously one of my favorite movie trilogies of all time is Star Wars. I really enjoy Blade Runner. Alien is a awesome movie, but you really kind of see it more in stuff like Arrival and Interstellar, beyond just the spaceness of the movie, and I'm sure that's a very technical term. But yeah, I've always this is the movie that people go to. It always makes the AFI top whatever lists, but just for me, I've the same thing. I've sat down to watch it numerous times, and I think you have to be in the right headspace, and you have to really, this isn't a movie that you can throw on and scroll your phone, and as of late that is kind of the enemy of movies, or movie watching is access to your phone. So yeah, it's the same thing for me. I've also with a lot of people, it would be interesting to see how many people think that 2001 A Space Odyssey is fantastic, it's great, it's inspiring, it's groundbreaking, but also feel like a majority of it is pretty boring. I've heard that a lot from people too, the slow burn, and I don't mind a slow burn movie. One of my favorite movies of all time is The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. Everybody I've ever suggested that movie to is I don't know, man, I got an hour into it, and I realized that I didn't want to watch this movie anymore. And it's just but I'm but the cinematography, and the thing I love about that movie is it's so true to what really happened, right? Or at least as far as what we've been told. So I don't mind a slow burn of a movie. But it's just, I don't know, for this one, it's I love The Shining. I've seen Lolita. I've seen, some of the other stuff that Kubrick's done. And, the great thing about, you could argue that The Shining is kind of a slow burn too. The cool thing about The Shining is that the way that it sets up is you kind of descend into this madness, and Kubrick does such a great job in that movie of making you feel like you yourself, the viewer, is descending into madness and not being able to really kind of place what you're seeing. I imagine that 2001 is very similar. And that's kind of my hope for it, that if I do give it the chance and that I do sit down, and that's the beauty of why we started this YouTube channel, is to force ourselves to watch movies that, you're sitting there. I don't know about you, dude, but I am so much of I'm going to throw on a movie I love. Most of the time it's doing other things. But this is going to force me to sit down and really look at it with a critical eye, for whatever that's worth. This isn't going to be a YouTube channel or a podcast that's going to be a film school. We're not going to be looking at this stuff from the technical, other than what we kind of acknowledge or identify as we watch it.
Yeah, we're posers.
We're posers, total posers. So, much like skaters, we'll critique that kickflip, even though we don't really know how to do it ourselves. No,
even though we've never done one.
We've never done it. I don't know. To be honest with you, I didn't know that I could do a heel flip before I could do a kick flip, and that's like, major poser territory.
Dude, I
Um,
was skateboarding for years, never could do a kickflip, and then like
yeah,
7 years later in high school, my friend had a skateboard, and I did it once, and I
yeah,
just never touched a skateboard again. So
dude,
that's kind of how I feel with these movies.
it's like the George Costanza thing of where you make a funny joke, you make the room laugh, and then you go, "That's it for me.
Oh
Good
yeah,
night,
dude, I was
everybody."
out. Yeah.
Yeah,
Why I'm excited about this is I'm such a huge fan of The Shining, and after us kind of talking about what we wanted to do and us locking down this movie, I
yeah.
realized I'm not sure if I've seen any of his other movies.
Yeah, you know what? I've seen Lolita. Lolita is another movie it's kind of a descent into madness. It makes you feel really uncomfortable because the subject matter is about an older man like falling in love with a young girl. And so, at first glance, stuff like that is hard to watch because you're like, "Oh, I don't like the way this feels."
Yeah.
But, there's something else I think that the director or the filmmakers are trying to get to. And I think like in 2001, that's probably where we're heading. I know, like, I've seen shots, obviously you see 2001 reference, you see, clips of the movie all over the place, so it's hard to avoid. So I know that the cinematography is going to be beautiful, and I know that it's going to be different. I'm just looking now and some of the other stuff. You've seen Clockwork Orange.
I've seen that. Other than that, that's probably the only two Kubrick movies that I've seen. What's the one? Is it Eyes Wide Shut?
There's Eyes Wide Shut, there's Full Metal Jacket. He did
Okay.
Lolita.
I've
He
seen
did
Full Metal Jacket, of course, and I loved that
Yeah.
one.
Barry Lyndon, which is kind of a Paths to Glory, which is a Kirk Douglas movie. Um, Barry Lyndon looks almost like a Shakespearean. I don't know much about the movie. I know that people love it, and I know that it's constantly referenced. So maybe what we need to do after this is kind of revisit some of the old Kubrick, filmography, and just
Yeah.
see what we're kind of missing, and maybe it'll give us more context for this movie. But I'm looking forward to it. I too have purchased the 4K Blu-ray just to watch this. I wanted to give it the best possible viewing I could, and so of course a physical meeting. By the way, me and Vince are really into collecting physical media, everything from DVDs to Blu-rays to 4K Blu-rays to VHS. We've recently got into VHS, which is, it's kind of wild. A lot of people, I got into a conversation the other night with a dude at a thrift store who was trying to big time me because I was buying VHS. And I said, well, VHS, dude, is like it's the new thing, man. He's like, but it's old. I'm like, I understand that. But it's also like I can buy a whole movie that I can keep in my collection for 89 cents. And, it's really the nostalgia factor. He's like, well, they lose their magnetization. And I said, all right, have a good night. Thanks.
Yeah, there's some people you're not going to win over, but
Yeah.
I the past few years I've struggled with the streaming services. It's amazing. I have a Plex account where pretty much anything that I can imagine.
You shouldn't tell people that, dude.
Well, it's not mine, but I have
Okay, all right.
access to one.
You're in
But
the clear then.
I have with streaming services, I have access to any movie that I want, and it's kind of killed the enjoyment of watching it. For some reason, I feel like if I put in a 4K or a Blu-ray or even a VHS, I
Yeah.
feel like I've made the choice. I'm locked in, and I actually have to have more steps to kind of turn something else on.
Totally. And for me, I totally agree with that. I think there's something in the intentionality of, it's great to have a gluttony of music, or it's great to have a gluttony of TV shows and movies. But most of the time you sit there and you spend your night looking for, the movie or TV show or the music you want to listen to in a sea of music,
Yeah.
and I always get this weird feeling of like, I guess it's FOMO, but I feel like I'm making the wrong choice by watching this particular movie when I could be watching something else. So yeah, intentionality I think is a huge thing. And also for VHS, like go watch a VHS and then watch something in 4K. It's like I always like the analogy or the comparison I make is like when you're on the on deck circle and you put the donut on your bat to make it heavier, so that way when you're up against the pitcher, your swing goes faster because now you're used to this, this extra weight on the bat. It's kind of the way it is with VHS, but I love everything around VHS. I love the rewind. My kids love coming over and rewinding the movies. I've at least turned them onto that. And I also love like the previews, like, that would
the
play
previews are
before a
the best.
movie. It sucks when you're like trying to find a specific place in the movie. But again, it's almost like, what I hear an 8-track back in the day was like, or a record where you have to sit there and, listen, or in this case, watch the whole thing. So
You lost me with the baseball analogies. The one comparison between watching 4K movies on my PlayStation and watching VHSs is that at least with the VHS player, I know how to stop and pause it and go back. With my PlayStation, I'm such a poser that I use my TV remote, And once a movie's on, I don't, besides pausing it, I don't know like the structure of
Yeah.
like going into the menus and changing things. And
Because you have to hit like it's off of what it should be, especially when you're playing games. Like X is
yeah,
pulls up the menu, circle pauses it. I do the same exact thing.
oh yeah, dude, it's rough. And like I think they do it on purpose, so you have to buy the PlayStation like entertainment remote, which I don't have. So
Yeah.
I'm just on the controller, just going.
I'm ready, dude. I'm ready to watch this movie. I'm ready to come back with our views on it, and look forward to talking to you about it. Are you ready to send it off to future Eli and Vince?
I think so, dude. And I really hope that we don't hate this movie because it's going to be kind of hard to have our first movie get all the hate comments. But
But that's the beauty
yeah,
of this. If you don't agree with us, that's completely fine. And
yeah,
movie watching is so subjective. I mean, there's outright movies that you watch and go, "Oh, this is corporate slosh." But a lot of movies, especially more art house movies, which this movie kind of is, or more auteur directors, which this movie was helmed by, I think it leaves a lot open to interpretation. And that's my favorite part about movies. And I disagree. I hope one of us doesn't like it so that it, makes the back and forth. We can kind of play good cop, bad cop, devil's advocate with it. But with that said, let's send it off to future Vince and Eli. Hey, thanks, past Eli and Vince. Boy, are you guys some serious posers. Never seen 2001? Future Eli and Vince have seen it. And we're here to tell you all about our first reactions. What's up, Vince?
hey,
We're a few days later after finally watching 2001, A Space Odyssey, the 1968 film from Stanley Kubrick. And we're here to talk all about it. As promised, we made good on our commitment. You and I made a pact when we started this show that we were not going to text each other what we thought of the movie, that we weren't going to call each other until we weren't going to indicate anything. And I think we did a pretty good job about that.
I think so. I called you today, and I kept catching myself wanting to talk about the movie a little bit and stopping myself. So I just stopped talking to you completely.
Yeah. So in the first part, I think, in some of we were looking forward to watching the movie, and we gave a little bit of what we thought the movie was going to be. One of my the things that I had said that I had mentioned that I thought the movie would kind of be similar to maybe The Shining in terms, or Lolita in terms of the descent, the descent into madness that Stanley Kubrick movies, from the ones I've seen, of kind of, the pattern. And boy, was I kind of right. I thought, yeah. I mean, what do you have to say before we get into the nitty gritty of this? And I have kind of a criteria I want to break down of, directing, cinematography, plot, script, all that stuff. I want to get into all of that because I definitely have thoughts. I know you do too. But yeah, just off the top of your head, give us your kind of first reaction of watching this movie.
So halfway through the movie, I did realize after we recorded the first part that there is one Kubrick movie that I absolutely love and have seen and didn't talk about, was Doctor Strangelove.
Yes.
Which is so good.
And also Full Metal Jacket. You've seen that one.
And Full Metal Jacket, yeah.
I have not seen those two movies, so we're definitely going to have to add those to the list. At some point, we're going to get to where maybe one of us has seen the movie and the other one hasn't, because I think there's a fun dynamic to be played there. I don't think in our intro episode we really talked about that much, but we're going to play with the format a little bit. But right now, to start, we thought it would be good to start with movies that neither one of us has seen. But yeah, you had mentioned the other day that you love Doctor Strangelove, and we kind of left a couple of those off the list. Oh, past Eli and Vince, how dumb you were. Doctor Strangelove is one of those movies. I remember you talking about that a few years ago after you had watched it.
Yeah, I bought it, and I have one of the special edition Blu-rays, which now we've moved on to 4K. So I'm kind of questioning if I want to buy. I don't know how you do it. If you own a movie on Blu-ray, are you tempted to buy a 4K? Do you upgrade again? I know you do a lot of digital.
Just full disclosure, let me pull back the curtain. I own 2001: A Space Odyssey on digital, on Vudu, in 4K.
Oh, okay.
But the price for this one, it was on sale, and yeah, I mean, honestly, truthfully, I do fall into that a lot. I have to really kind of regulate because the collector part of me wants just the glut of physical digital. As has gone on, I've amassed a huge digital library that I still love, that I still watch and I add to, and I'll always do that because I think that goes the furthest. Not to mention, like, a lot of my family uses it and a lot of people get to enjoy it. So
Me
I like
included,
that.
and I do like it.
Yeah. And you know, I think that the 4K streaming is pretty close to physical, but there's, you know, and that's where maybe I'll start here is I got to say the physical, the transfer of this movie, the remaster of the audio was absolutely incredible. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
I think it was by far the best 4K movie I've watched on physical Blu-ray disc. So I'm happy that I bought it. But yeah, I'm gonna try to not get into a trend of buying movies that I already have and use the ones, and because that's part of it too, is like I keep collecting even though there's movies that I still haven't watched. So I really need to dig into my collection and you know, actually use the things I pay for.
That's fair. That being said, I really like the movie. I didn't look at the runtime of the movie, and
Yeah.
I'm doing a horror fest too, so I also had to get a horror movie in after the fact, and I didn't start it till like 7, I think. So it was a long movie, and because I had more to watch, I kind of kept looking to see how much longer I had on it.
Yeah.
Um, which like maybe doesn't speak that great to the movie that I wasn't. But this movie like is very much so. There's a lot of beautiful scenes, and Kubrick does such a good job of like staying in the scene, and
Yes.
I absolutely love that. Obviously, there's parts where he could have shortened it. I think personally a little bit. The total ending part, which is just like the dude's brain melting and them showing landscapes, super cool, but it's like a good like 4.5 5 minutes of just the same thing over and over. They start to throw in a little more of like his reactions to it, but it felt so long, dude. I don't know if we're jumping
Yeah.
to if I'm jumping to the end on this one, but
No, I yeah, no, I think we can start by summarizing the entire movie. And I agree. You know, I in watching this movie, first of all, I really, really enjoyed the movie. As you know, I enjoyed this movie in the same way that I would enjoy going to an art gallery and looking at a painting that I
yeah.
really liked. There's a lot in this movie that's left to interpretation. And so I was constantly forced to recognize the relationship I have as a modern moviegoer, not having seen this in 1968, but that also forced me to kind of watch it through the lens of somebody like just sat down in a theater, you know, had there was nothing like this that had come out until 1968 in you know, in terms of cinema that I'm aware of, or at least as you know, profound as this
At
movie.
least is like well done, because there's definitely like
Right.
spin space movies, but they've always been super cheesy.
Sure.
Also, I spoilers. I don't know if we have to say that by this point,
Yes,
but there's
plenty
gonna
of
be
spoilers
spoilers.
coming
Yeah,
up.
there's gonna be spoilers coming up. That was another lens that I was watching this movie, kind of thinking about and thinking about what came before it and what came after. And you
Yeah.
can definitely see the designs in this movie, and seeing that it
Yes.
was made in 1968, like nothing like this has happened, and then so much after the fact mimicked what he did in just like spacecraft design, space, like the interior of the spaceships. And honestly, I was blown away at how well he did. There's the opening scene where the guy's in the space shuttle and his pen's flying around. And years
Yeah.
ago I saw like kind of how they did it, which was cool, but it's flawless. It's
Well,
so good.
and that's kind of what I mean is like you're watching it. It's like I couldn't help but think of all of the filmmakers that this movie inspired: Ridley Scott, Alien; George Lucas, Star Wars; Steven Spielberg, Close Encounters of the Third Kind; or even Jaws. You know, so I was sitting there kind of thinking about, man, what would it have been like to sit down in a movie theater? And in reading and doing a little bit of research of this movie, when it first came out, people did not know what to think of this movie. It said at the premiere, I think it was that like 23 people walked out, including Rock Hudson. And Rock Hudson had a famous quote, and I'm totally paraphrasing, but it said something along the lines of, "Tell me what the hell this movie was about, or what did it mean?" So I think the ones that got it are the ones that latched on. I think the real cinephiles of the day. But looking at those film directors and the creators and filmmakers that this movie inspired into making some of the biggest movies of all time, highest grossing box office. I think you know, a lot of times with movies, you'll watch something and maybe you don't understand it the first time, and that affects your opinion of the movie. But as you sit with it longer, maybe you watch it again later, you know, your opinion changes on it. That's happened to me. I think that happens to a lot of people. And I think that's kind of the way it went with the movie, the film, or the movie going audience. And so, yeah, I agree with you. Like, I was constantly aware of this tug of war of like modern filmmaking in terms of the opening, you know, the opening shot is a black screen for an extended period of
For
time. I
like
watched
2
it with my
minutes, right?
wife. I
Or
I didn't
longer?
count, but I bet it was longer than that. But
Yeah.
you know, the way he'll sit on a sequence of a spaceship flying, that in sequence you talk about, you know, people going down the corridors. There was one shot that struck me in particular, and it wasn't anything crazy about the movie. It wasn't anything, but it was the one where the guy first gets on the ship and he's going to speak to the board about what's going on, you know, with the moon and what they found on the moon. And the set was curved up and they were walking down and he just sat on that shot the whole time. And as a movie fan, I was going, man, the way he builds the world is so awesome. And it's so like, for you as the person watching the movie, it puts you in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And I think that is like, that's the best compliment I can give this movie, is that it puts you in the movie. I mean, there's so many times I told you that in sequence after he deconstructs Hal and takes Hal's brain out, and then the obelisk is floating in space, and there's a sequence, the trippy. It felt like I was on drugs. I mean,
Yeah,
it
it
felt
was
like I
wild.
had taken something and I was peaking with like the images that were on screen. And going back to what I was saying before, you know, it did remind me of like a piece of art that you go and look at and you study, and you kind of, a lot of good art, you'll sit there and go, what the heck, like what am I looking at? And then your brain tries to process and make sense of it. But then as like a modern movie going person, I'm sitting there going, and all the conventional wisdom of the modern filmmaking of today is, this should have been cut. Like, we get it.
Yeah.
Like, we get that, you know, like we get that people are walking down a hall. We get that this is a spaceship. Like, let's get on. But I will say that the one thing that stood out to me this movie, and the flaw that I have that really kind of, in my opinion, shapes the rewatchability factor, is there's not a lot of plot in this movie. The plot is very thin. I think by design. Like, I
Yeah.
don't think it was anything that
It
this
felt
movie
like a
is.
showcase of, this is what I'm able to do when it comes to getting you into the movie, and then also special effects. Other than that, there's one plot line. There's one struggle of the character having to pretty much find out that the AI has gone rogue, which was amazing. And I was sitting back thinking, like, maybe this is my horror movie of the day, because
Yeah.
it's
I
not
mean, it was.
yeah, it's not
It
technically a
was,
horror
dude.
movie,
It was,
but
and like, I don't think there's a through plot line, which is that they have found this obelisk. Is that what? Am I saying that right? Is it the
yeah, I
obelisk?
believe so. That's what I call it. Yeah, this is the first movie that I sat down and wrote notes. So I have tons of stuff that just kind of jumped out to me. There was one part in the beginning of the movie where
It's called the monolith. It's called the
monolith.
monolith like technically of. So
Okay.
I keep calling it obelisk, but it's the monolith. Forgive me. I'm
Okay.
still learning. I am a poser, so I'm going to get it wrong. But that's the through plot line, is like that you know, the very beginning, the monolith is something that initiates evolution in the monkey men, the cavemen, the missing link. There's like a technical term for it that I'm not going to try to pronounce.
Yeah.
So it was clear, but it wasn't clear in terms of what the impact of that was in these different sequences. So there was a through plot line of them discovering some kind of alien of some sort, and that affecting different things, but he doesn't tell you what it is. And, you know, Quentin Tarantino, I read a quote from him that said that each sequence, like, Kubrick basically ties up knots up until the end, like up until the stuff, the reveal about Hal. And that's a perfect way to describe it. Like, he doesn't resolve things. He keeps building and making you go, what am I heading towards?
Yeah.
And I didn't necessarily, for as much as like this movie has permeated pop culture and permeated, you know, reference, and it's been lampooned and everything else like that, I didn't necessarily know that it was going to be how it was going to turn. So that was really interesting. The modern movie going person in me goes, the movie should have been about that, and we should have been on with the crew this entire time, and we shouldn't have taken, you know, 20 minutes to you know, but there's also an art form in building suspense. You know, you see that in Tarantino movies. He does that. That's what I love about his movies. He'll build up the suspense until like you can't take it anymore, and then he'll break the tension.
Which
But
this
yeah,
movie did, and it did it in a way that I haven't experienced anything else. The music built all the suspense for
music
this
was
movie.
beautiful.
It
It
was
was beautiful.
beautiful. We're lame. Paige kind of watched some of it. I didn't. Also, I didn't
Paige is
look
your
up.
girlfriend.
She's my girlfriend. I didn't look up anything about this movie. That music is not originally from this film, right? Like it's classical music.
No, it's not original score, but rather a collection of pre-existing classical pieces by composers. So I did read a thing that said that it wasn't supposed to be the final soundtrack of the movie. It was
Oh, okay.
like basically a placeholder, and then Kubrick loved it, so he kept it in there.
Okay.
But yeah, I didn't know that either. I mean, I
Yeah,
just kind of always associate that music with 2001: A Space Odyssey.
and I feel like this movie's old enough that possibly it could have been from this movie, and it's so old that I just
Yeah.
never knew. There was one thing in it. So in the beginning of the movie, you were talking about how he kind of makes it feel so real and it makes it feel like you're inside the movie. I was picking apart the little details, like the space shuttle that he's originally in. They zoom in or like are zoomed in on the pilots going, and then the computer systems from IBM. They're flying in Pan America space shuttle.
Yeah.
Did you see the hotels that are on either side of the?
No.
There's the Hilton, and then there's also what is it? Howard Johnson.
Howard Johnson.
Yeah. So there's companies that obviously in the 60s already existed, and I loved that he had them further on in the future and still existing. But there's one part where he calls his daughter and he asks her what she wants for her birthday.
Yeah.
And she says that she wants a phone. And that was like the first part where I started taking notes, because I was like, that's probably the most realistic aspect of the future that I doubt they even, because I'm everywhere on this one. But I thought it was such a cool detail. I can't imagine a girl in 68, a little girl wanting a phone for her birthday. But nowadays, our kids want a phone for their birthdays.
Well, and also the irony is that they're talking through a picture phone. They're talking through a video phone. They're basically FaceTiming in what 1960s.
Yeah, it's a Pac Bell picture phone.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it was more, you know, that scene was really interesting. There's definitely a critique here of corporate America.
Yeah.
And there's definitely an examination of human beings and what we mean and, what we're capable of. I mean, the transition from the caveman, monkey man, missing link, throwing the femur bone up in the air and having it turn into a spaceship is very symbolic. I think this movie is full of symbolism. I think that there's, this movie is really searching for meaning, I feel like. And again, there's 50, 60 years now of expose and study of this film. So again, I haven't spent much time thinking about it. This is the first time I've really thought about it. But I'll tell you what, man, I'm going to be thinking about this. This movie is going to stay with me. And I'm going to be thinking at it at all the times that I hate myself the most. Like when I'm in line, when I spend, an inordinate amount of time in the Chick-fil-A line to get a drive-through chicken sandwich. When I show up on Sunday at Chick-fil-A and I'm pissed every time because I really want Chick-fil-A and I forget that, that they're closed on Sunday.
Yeah.
When I'm at home because Chick-fil-A is closed on Sunday and I'm eating frozen chicken nuggets that I heat up, but I'm using Polynesian sauce that I got from Chick-fil-A.
It sounds like Sundays are hard for you, dude.
Sundays are tough when that's why I need to go to church. But I'm going to think about this movie and go, God, Kubrick made that movie. And here I am. Like, I just want a chicken sandwich.
You can't function without Chick-fil-A, dude.
I can function. I'm just going to hate, I'm going to hate everything about it and myself for feeling that way. But, but that's the cool thing about this movie is like everybody, you can probably sit 10 people down and watch this movie and everybody would have a different perspective and certain perspectives would line up. But yeah, I will say that overall, like this movie, I really enjoyed it as a first time experience. This is not a movie that I would throw on for entertainment.
And this isn't a movie that I think I would tell other people like, oh, you got to check out this movie if you haven't seen it. Like, I feel like it's specifically tailored to someone that loves movies, someone that can appreciate the fact that this was made in 68. All of the visual effects just produced a plethora of other spin-off space. I don't know. Like it inspired so much that's what I took away from watching this, and I could appreciate it for that. I don't think John at work that watches just like The Bachelor and stuff could throw this on and be super excited to watch this movie if he's never seen it.
Sure, but the other side of that coin, and the argument I would make of why I would want to talk, like I would want to talk about this movie with somebody that had seen it, because I feel like somebody's opinion, it's almost like a Rorschach test. Like
Yeah.
this movie and people's opinions on it would tell you a lot about them. I mean, there's
Oh,
themes in
totally.
here that you can pick apart about humanity, about our relationship. You know, is there a God, creation? You know, what's our place in this world? You know, are we just cogs in a wheel that feed a machine? And that was the important part of those boardroom meetings. And you know, I love that sequence when he was in there talking to I think it was a Danish doctor, and the guy was trying to get information out of him, and he was like, look, I'm not at liberty to say. And it's, you know, there's something there speaking towards the covert nation of bureaucracy
Yeah.
and who holds the reins of power. And there's so many peaks and valleys of this movie that you know, that I think you could sink your teeth in and really talk to people about, and that is what is interesting to me about it. So first of all, like, let's cover filmmaking. Stanley Kubrick's a genius, a mad genius. There's stories of him doing, you know, I think it was for Eyes Wide Shut, something crazy like 2 weeks or 2 months to shoot one scene, and he drives people crazy. Drove, like, a lot of people say that Shelley Duvall, because she kind of went off the deep end towards the end, that Stanley Kubrick was the cause of that.
Which I kind of heard of, and I kind of heard something talking about how they did that and how he got the whole cast into just like treating her like shit the entire movie, which is insane.
Auteur directors do weird things. You know, performers and auteur directors do weird things to pull certain performances out of people. And, you know, on a human level, it's a crappy thing to do. But from a filmmaking perspective, when it works, it works.
Yeah,
you know?
She was distraught the entire movie, and you could feel it.
She's fantastic in that movie. Yeah. And what he's able to accomplish in that movie, you know, it does make me want to go watch the entire filmography of Stanley Kubrick. So from a directing point of view, I think it truly is brilliant. It's one of those few things that, you know, that does like, it is worth the hype, you know, believe the hype, so to speak. But, you know, so I don't know, from a filmmaking, it seems like you kind of agree with me that from a technical filmmaking perspective, it was so meticulous and beautiful. The cinematography is nuts.
Yeah.
You touched on it with the special effects. That's the other thing that I kept having to do with playing this game of like modernity versus the past, and being like, that pin floating, like, that's not CG. That's something that was done in camera, or something that was, you know, I don't know. Me and Sarah, my wife, who was watching the first half of it barely, we kept playing this game. We kept playing this game of like, what we're watching, is this a sound stage? Like, are these matte paintings like the vibrant
do you mean like for the apes, like
the moon,
or whatever?
Not the apes. That was clearly they shot on location, but the stuff for like the shots of the moon.
So, you know, one of the notes that I had was me questioning if they shot the ape scenes on location or if that was a matte, because in 4K everything looks gorgeous, and I'm looking at it, and there's certain parts where you could see like there could be a divide, but I also was questioning, like, did they actually film these on actual locations? Because it's crazy.
I feel like that they shot on locations. I'm sure it was matte paintings. I'm sure it was, you know, forced perspective. I think that the scene where they're going down into the pit on the moon to look at the monolith. You like how I'm implementing that now?
Yeah,
that I know what it is. I'm using,
which is funny because in
all
all of my notes it says monolith, and then whenever you said the other one, I was like, yeah, that's what I think it is.
Yeah, and I think an obelisk is like actually technically, like, isn't it like round? I don't know that it's necessarily
I have no idea.
But you know what I'm saying. But I like, they were going down, and she was like, is that on a soundstage? I said, I think it's a soundstage and a green screen. I'll tell you what, if they used a green or a blue screen, I think back then they probably used a blue screen. It like was pretty seamless in 4K, which is also impressive. There was never a time I went, oh, this is 1968.
There was one time. Did you notice the
monkeys, you know?
No, in Space, there's one specific scene where they where the guy goes out to fix the machine, and he's just like flying in space.
Yeah. And
did you notice? And there was like a square cutout of where he was.
Yeah, and it was clear that he was on some kind of turntable, and they were just moving like the background or whatever, or they transposed him onto a background.
That's what it seems like. And then the following scene where the other guy comes out, it doesn't have that. So it seems like everything is so intentional with Kubrick that I always hesitate that I'm gonna say his name wrong. I feel like there's any issue with a scene, I feel like it's intentional. There was that scene where it was obviously a cutout, and then there's also the scene that you're talking about where he was talking to like the scientists sitting inside the big like shuttle moon base whenever it first starts.
Yeah.
And there's a scene where it starts and there's like a giant like a screen crash onto the scene. Did you notice that?
No.
There's one part, and then I even wrote a note like, I wonder if this was intentional to show like all the space stuff has happened and then he's crashed down into reality where they're asking him about what happened. It could just be me like thinking that this is something that I have to like pick every piece of, so I did.
Maybe he got, dude, maybe he just got so far in your head that like he's like directing you.
Yeah.
He's
but
not
it was
even
like
alive anymore.
25
but
minutes in,
you.
and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
what does that mean?
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know, like if you have any other major notes. That's pretty much my review of this movie. The last thing I'll say is after he disembowels Hal, which was a great sequence, and it was truly like chilling when Hal's like, I can feel it. I can feel my mind beginning to. I can feel it, Dave. Dave, you don't have to do this, Dave. Take it back, Dave. Like that whole sequence was great. After that, so my theory is that he dies on that ship. And everything we see after that of him going through like a wormhole, I think is him going into the afterworld. And then when he shows up at that very end, there's also a play. Like I was thinking, like, is the monolith like Satan?
I was thinking that him going and finding the monolith next to Saturn or Jupiter, and then the brain warp melt thing, and then he goes into the room where he sees the older version of himself, and then the older one, and then the baby, like the evolution of it showing up with the apes learning how to use a tool and or weapon, and then going into space, the progression of that. I feel like maybe at the end, the progression of where we go from there is kind of like defeating what we know as birth and death and just transitioning into something that's like recycling, and you just I don't I'm trying to get
that's
again,
wrong.
I was trying to get deep.
You're completely wrong. That's the wrong assessment. That's not what he meant for. Yeah, no, I mean,
I feel like it was the human race progressing into like a god like figure where he's just an infant in space controlling everything.
I don't know. I mean,
I could be wrong. Tell me in the comments. Please explain
tell him in the
what you
think
wrong. It means, what you actually know that it means.
Yeah.
Because
I
have no idea.
If you're watching this and you know, like if you've really sat down and written, essays on this and dissertations, is the word I was looking for, dissertations, and you know something we don't, let us know. I want to be edified. I enjoy the conversation around this movie. I don't know, Vince, you said you took a bunch of notes. I don't know if you have anything else to know. I think filmmaking wise, it was great.
Yeah.
Cinematography was great. The performances were excellent. The sets, everything down was great. It was long. And as somebody of a modern age, like I was looking for areas where I'm like, okay, you could have probably cut 30 minutes out of that movie and you probably would have gotten the same thing. The plot was a little thin for me. I like not that I like an overly plot heavy movie, but I like the plot to progress and to feel like, the character, because you're not with the characters very long. You're with the characters very quickly, and the character progression, there's not much character progression other than what you're seeing right in front of you. There's a little bit, him talking to his family back on Earth. But I think if you're going to rewrite this movie and you're going to make it about an AI going bad, the HAL 9000, that's the focal point of the movie. And then you get to know these characters, and then when it turns. But that's not what the point of this movie is. And I'm absolutely not trying to rewrite Stanley Kubrick. I really enjoyed it for what it was. All right, now's the time. If you don't have any other notes, I don't want to step on the other stuff that you wanted to bring up. So if you have other stuff.
The only other note I have is the fact that there was an intermission halfway through this movie.
Yeah, like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
I want that in every movie, dude. I saw it and I was like, oh, sweet, I'm gonna go grab a snack.
Yeah, that's the other thing that I was like, what? Like, I get it. Like, I get it. It wasn't that long of a movie that it needed an intermission. It was like 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah, the intermission was maybe a minute and a half, so it wasn't a very lengthy one. But I was kind of stoked.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like such a thing of the past, an intermission. I mean, that's really like a musical or play device, so people can go, to the bathroom or whatever.
This movie was pretty much a musical if you think about it. So
I don't know that it was a musical.
Fits, dude. There's
It wasn't a
music.
musical. It might have been like you can maybe look at it like a stage play for sure, because it was it was told in sequences and that weren't necessarily connected to each other.
Yeah.
And there's a massive time jump. I mean, 18 months or whatever it was. There's a time jump. I will note, and we talked about this earlier. There's a sequel to this movie that came out in I think it was 1984, but it was called 2010, the year we make contact. Kubrick wasn't involved. In fact, Kubrick. After 2001 Space Odyssey, he had all the sets destroyed so nobody could ever use them again.
That's
So I
an
was reading
awesome
that they
movie.
had to go in and watch this movie and take stills to remake the sets for 2010. I've seen everything from this movie's an abomination to this movie doesn't get talked about enough. It's basically what happens after the Jupiter um, mission. And I don't know, like that alone is like, well, why? Like that's not the point of what this movie was.
Yeah.
And so to go and try to make like a linear thing, but I do own it on VHS, so that might be something that I have to pop in one day just out of
Yeah.
pure curiosity.
A little bit of
and come
homework.
back.
I feel like it
Yeah.
was me included, but the dummies trying to figure out what it meant. So at some
No,
point,
it was 100% the studio going, we should make more money off
they
this.
just still had the rights for it.
We have this. Kubrick won't ever touch it again with a 10-foot pole. Let's do it. I mean, they do it now. There's movies that like they should never remake or reboot, and they do it. Let's end the show by giving our rewatchability rating 1 to 5, and you can use 0.5, you can use fractions. Go crazy. But what is your rewatchability 1 to 5 on this movie?
So rewatchability is different than like respect for what it is.
Sure,
The-
but we've
the-
already established that
Yeah,
we
so
liked it.
The chances of me watching this over and over and over are pretty slim. Honestly, I'd give this maybe a 2. I would love to show it to other people that would want, like, I would want their insight to what they took away from it. But if it's just me sitting down, I'm probably not going to throw this on. So I'd give it a 2 for rewatchability.
I'm stoked that I added it to my collection. I'm stoked that it looks as great as it does. I'll give it a 3, strictly because like I can see me like showing my kids this movie one day and being like, this is a truly great film.
Yeah.
And you watch so many things throughout the course of your life that there's always a point where you think back and you're like, what was that about? Like what? Or you remember glimpses, but you don't remember how they connect and stuff, or at least I do. So I'll give it a 3. It's not going to be something that I pop in, if I'm doing chores around the house or I'm writing something or I'm working, to throw something on in the background. That's going to, I don't want something this heady. And it was heady and it was long, but man, it really was a like symphony of different moving parts that I think in the end work together and I think deserve to be as, to be held in high regard in the way it is through what, 60 years now almost. Is that where we're at? I think we're going on 60 years. It's crazy. It's crazy that a movie can look and feel that like fresh.
Yeah.
Other than the length of time and the length of like how long things are established and things are allowed to sit. But I also loved it because of that. So that's mine. 3. Yours is a 2. I guess we'll meet in the middle at 2.5. What do you think? Just overall.
Yeah. And we'll see if we get some hate for the rewatchability score. Yeah, I liked it. I liked the movie a lot. Probably not going to put it on for a long time. Like you said, show kids or just put it on at some point where I kind of forget certain parts. It'd be sweet to have as a background with no sound, just to kind of like look at and be like, oh, that's pretty.
Well, I mean, the sound, I don't agree with you that it is kind of like a musical, but it is very orchestral and it is very, there's limited dialogue and stuff like that. So, hey, if you're watching this, thank you so much for watching it with us. This is a new kind of thing that we're working out, new experiment, but we're enjoying it. It's already produced the result that we wanted, which is to force us to sit down and watch movies that we haven't seen that we should have because we're posers. And
it shows, dude.
And it shows, and it probably shows. And if you feel like it shows, put that in the comments too. But we'd love to interact with you. We'd love to have suggestions of movies that maybe you think we should watch. We've kind of put together a tangential list of things that we think are classic movies, beyond what we've already watched. And it's the challenge and the fun is finding movies that both of us haven't watched. But come back, interact with us, like and subscribe. And we thank you. We thank you for being posers with us. And Vince, you have anything left to say?
If you have any suggestions, put them in the comments. Are we going to talk about what our next movie is going to be? We're going to drop a hint?
We're going to leave that. We'll leave that open. We're going to start releasing these episodes. This one's going to come out a little bit earlier, but we're going to release them every Sunday. So eventually they're also going to be in audio podcast format. So we're going to try to, hit all the angles here and reach out to as many people as possible. But I think we can hint. Do you have a good hint for the next movie? You know
I don't.
what it
I was
is.
just gonna straight up say it. I don't know a hint. It's a
I don't.
spooky one. It's spooky season's coming.
Spooky season's coming. That's the other thing is we're going to try to put together, especially for the month of October, more horror based, more things that kind of align with Halloween. We love Halloween. Vince is a massive. I love horror. Vince loves horror 20 times more than me and is down to get in the trenches of horror. So
I'm devoted.
we're going to start with some of the bigger tentpole movies to start, but we're going to get into the nitty gritty throughout the course of this thing. So thanks for stopping by. Thanks for watching. Look forward to hearing and seeing you next time.
Confessions of a Film Poser.